Welcome back, and a very special welcome to our next guest. Her name is Dr. Carol Swain. She is an extraordinarily accomplished woman with a really remarkable life story. She has been a professor at some of the best universities in the United States. She's an author, she's a blogger, she is a resource, I think, for all of us who care about freedom and the character of our country, as well as the character of our polity. She has been active in particular in opposition to efforts to assert that this is a racist nation, one that has been systematically so. She points to her own life experiences as indicative of the fact that that is not the case. She was the woman that I was hoping that President Biden had in mind when he said he was going to pick a black woman to become the next Supreme Court justice. Alas, he chose someone else, Ketanji Brown Jackson. And I wanted to talk with Carol as a very accomplished, as I say, attorney and law professor to evaluate not just this nomination, but the process by which it was made. Carol Swain, welcome back to Securing America. It's great to have you with us.
I can tell you that when I was on the job market as a um, young PhD, I refused to apply to positions that were minority only, where I would have competed just against other Black people. And so I find it offensive, but also believe it's unconstitutional for President Biden to limit competition to one category of people, not even including, just the whole idea that he believes that the only way you could get a qualified Black woman on the Supreme Court was to limit competition to Black women. That's ludicrous. And it's also unconstitutional. I believe it runs counter to our civil rights laws, and it's problematic that she's going to be voting on, if confirmed, an affirmative action case and a voting rights case.
No, I think this is such an important point, and it seems as though, especially if one takes to heart, Martin Luther King's admonitions about the quality of your character being what you're judged by, not the color of your skin. uh, really an abomination, as well as you say, I think a constitutionally problematic practice. Let's talk about this nominee, though, and what you've expressed some concerns about her background and associations that should be disqualifying. It
Well,
seems to me.
first of all, she is the pick of the progressive left, the far left. And on the committee that selected her was a board member of Black Lives Matter. And we know they stand for defunding the police. They stand for a lot of things that many of us would consider anti American. But she, the person, a high profile person from Black Lives Matter, was part of that committee. And the progressives, they were the ones that hounded Justice Breyer until he decided to retire early. And with Judge Katanja Brown Jackson, what you get is a person who she checks the right boxes. She has her Harvard degree. And I personally believe that we have too many people on the court with Ivy League degrees. They have disappointed us again and again. And I don't care whether they're liberals or conservatives, they're indoctrinated in such a way that they don't necessarily adhere to the Constitution. They are always elitist. I would prefer to see people from a wider range of law schools. So that's one issue that I would have personally. But this particular justice, it's she believes in partial birth abortion. She is as radical, I would say, as you can get. And then she also has not, she's been overruled on two opinions. And it's my understanding that she's only authored one majority opinion where she actually wrote the opinion. I would have preferred.
Yeah. She's relatively new to the bench too, as I recall. She's only been on in the appellate court in the past year, as I
Right.
understand it. So this is not a long judicial track record.
Well, apparently,
President Biden, in
yes.
his so-called State of the Union address, suggested that she was one of the great legal minds of our time. Does your assessment of her track
Well, I
with
mean,
that or not?
she, she has served in on lower courts a longer period of time. There's no evidence that she's a great judicial mind. And if competition was going to be limited to black women, which I don't believe that should have been done because it was unconstitutional, he could have nominated a black woman. I would have preferred from Judge Childs, I believe, from South Carolina, or the justice from California, Lenora Kruger, I believe is her name, one of those. But at the end of the day, it's very problematic how he selected this nominee. And I hope that Republicans, the three that voted for her confirmation last time, that they will not use that or pass votes for her as a reason to say that they have to do it again. No, you don't have to do it again, because a Supreme Court nomination and confirmation, that has lasting consequences. And so you're not just getting, a black woman or a black face, you're getting a far left progressive that will push an agenda that is not pro American. And we know with Black Lives Matter, they have Marxist roots. And so there's no reason to believe, given this woman's positions, that she isn't also someone who would lean towards Marxism and socialism.
Yeah. You mentioned some of the cases before the court. This is a moment when you've been very actively involved in trying to counter the left's rewriting of our national history, notably with the 1619 Project. Talk a little bit about the sort of context in which this judicial appointment is going to be making these decisions. Um, is that the kind of agenda that you anticipate she would be trying to advance as well? This sort of radical assertion that this
Well,
is a
look at
racist country?
since George Floyd's death, uh, the one thing, we had the situation of millions of dollars, over $60 million, going into Black Lives Matter. We don't know where that money is today, but the diversity, equity, and inclusion industry, critical race theory, it has pretty much taken over the nation, even though the law of the land says that we are not supposed to engage in discrimination. That the law says that is the law supports anti-discrimination and equal accommodations. It does not support the radical agenda that's being pushed and being accepted at many institutions, and including our government. And I think that she would certainly advance that agenda. And I have been very involved. As you know, I authored a book last year that was written to educate the public, called Black Eye for America: How Critical Race Theory is Burning Down the House. And critical race theory is something that it just runs counter to our civil rights laws and to our Constitution and who we are as Americans. And I believe that there's no evidence that this particular nominee would support the uh, Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. I believe she would pursue an agenda that would be more akin to Black Lives Matter, the people that want to defund the police and empty the prisons. And I don't believe that when it comes to crime, that she would have a concern about that. She seems to be more concerned about criminals than about the victims.
This is a deeply troubling indictment, really, of sort of certainly her past record and associations, and anticipating where she might go from here. On the critical race theory piece, we've been talking in the course of the program to this point, Carol, with several former leftists about the agenda. And are you very clear about the character of this critical race theory? Is it, as I believe, a Marxist agenda designed to divide us against one another and essentially take down
Anyone that
this
says that
country?
critical race theory is not being taught in K through 12 schools, that they're lying. And if you go to Black Lives Matter, they had a week of action for schools. What they have done is to take those ideas that are related to Marxism and postmodernism, and they have distilled it into children's books for K through 12. And sometimes those books don't go home with the children, but they're in children's books. And so it is everywhere. And I maintain that as it is being practiced, even with the sensitivity training, that it runs counter to the civil rights laws because they prohibit discrimination against people on the basis of their race, color, nationality, sex, and religion. And we know that some of the things that are taking place, not only does it seem to infringe it violates the civil rights laws, but also the equal protection clause, and probably in many cases the First Amendment, because it compels people under threat of losing their job or being kicked out of school or some organization to voice and affirm certain things that they don't believe about themselves and their racial and ethnic group. Oh
And
yes,
about
I
our
mean
country,
yes.
too, needless to say. Dr. Carol Swain, we have to leave it at that. We've got so much more to talk about. I hope that you'll come back to us again very soon. In the meantime, thank you for your clear eyed leadership and your courage in tackling these very important topics, including that of the next Supreme Court nominee. We'll look forward to seeing how this plays out and your role in it.